Hello and welcome to Public Domain Dad, where I read a story from the public domain like I read to my kids. I'm your host, CJ. Today we are starting part 4 of the Voyages of Dr. Dolittle. The first chapter, Shellfish Languages Again. Miranda, the purple bird of paradise, had prophesied rightly when she had foretold a good spell of weather. For 3 weeks, the good ship Curlew plowed her way through smiling seas before a steady, powerful wind. I suppose most real sailors would have found this part of the voyage dull, but not I. As we got further south and further west, the face of the sea seemed different every day, and all the little things of a voyage which an old hand would have hardly bothered to notice were matters of great interest for my eager eyes. We did not pass many ships. When we did see one, the doctor would get out his telescope and we would all take a look at it. Sometimes he would signal to it, asking for news, by hauling up little colored flags upon the mast, and the ship would signal back to us in the same way. The meaning of all the signals was printed in a book which the doctor kept in the cabin. He told me it was a language of the sea and that all ships could understand it, whether they be English, Dutch, or French. Our greatest happening during those first weeks was passing an iceberg. When the sun shone on it, it burst into 100 colors, sparkling like a jeweled palace in a fairy story. Through the telescope, we saw a mother polar bear with a cub sitting on it, watching us. The doctor recognized her as one of the bears who had spoken to him when he was discovering the North Pole. So he sailed the ship up close and offered to take her and her baby on the Curlew if she wished it. But she only shook her head, thanking him. She said it would be far too hot for the cub on the deck of our ship, with no ice to keep his feet cool. It had been indeed a very hot day, but the nearness of the great mountain of ice made us all turn up our coat collars and shiver with the cold. During those quiet, peaceful days, I improved my reading and writing a great deal with the doctor's help. I got on so well that he let me keep the ship's log. This is a big book kept on every ship, a kind of diary, in which the number of miles run, the direction of your course, and everything else that happens is written down. The doctor, too, in what spare time he had, was nearly always writing in his notebooks. I used to peep into those sometimes now that I could read, but I found it hard work to make out the doctor's handwriting. Many of these notebooks seemed to be about sea things. There were 6 thick ones filled full with notes and sketches of different seaweeds, and there were others on sea birds, others on sea worms, others on seashells. They were all some day to be rewritten, printed, and bound like regular books. One afternoon, we saw, floating around us, great quantities of stuff that looked like dead grass. The doctor told me this was gulfweed. A little further on, it became so thick that it covered all the water as far as the eye could reach. It made the Curlew look as though she were moving across a meadow instead of sailing the Atlantic. Crawling about upon this weed, many crabs were to be seen, and the sight of them reminded the doctor of his dream of learning the language of the shellfish. He fished several of these crabs up with a net and put them in his listening tank to see if he could understand them. Among the crabs, he also caught a strange-looking, chubby little fish, which he told me was called a silver fidget. After he had listened to the crabs for a while with no success, he put a fidget into the tank and began to listen to that. I had to leave him at this moment to go and attend to some duties on the deck, but presently I heard him below shouting for me to come down again. "Stubbins!" he cried as soon as he saw me. "A most extraordinary thing. Quite unbelievable. I'm not sure whether I am dreaming. I can't believe my own senses. Why, doctor," I said, "what is it? What's the matter?" "The fidget," he whispered, pointing with a trembling finger to the listening tank in which the little round fish was still swimming quietly. "He talks English, and he whistles tunes, English tunes." "Talks English?" I cried. "Whistles? Why, it's impossible." "It's a fact," said the doctor, white in the face with excitement. "It's only a few words, scattered, with no particular sense to them, all mixed up with his own language, which I can't make out yet. But they're English words, unless there's something very wrong with my hearing. And the tune he whistles, it's as plain as anything, always the same tune. Now, you listen and tell me what you make of it. Tell me everything you hear. Don't miss a word." I went to the glass tank upon the table while the doctor grabbed a notebook and a pencil. Undoing my collar, I stood upon the empty packing case he had been using for a stand and put my right ear down under the water. For some moments, I detected nothing at all, except with my dry ear for the heavy breathing of the doctor as he waited, all stiff and anxious, for me to say something. At last, from within the water, sounding like a child singing miles and miles away, I heard an unbelievably thin, small voice. "Ah," I said. "What is it?" asked the doctor in a hoarse, trembly whisper. "What does he say?" "I can't quite make it out," I said. "It's mostly in some strange fish language. Oh, but wait a minute. Yes, now I get it. No smoking. My, here's a queer one. Popcorn and picture postcards here. This way out. Don't spit. What funny things to say, doctor." "Oh, but wait. Now he's whistling the tune." "What tune is it?" asked the doctor. "John Peel." "Aha!" cried the doctor. "That's what I made it out to be." And he wrote furiously in his notebook. I went on listening. "This is most extraordinary," the doctor kept muttering to himself as his pencil went wiggling over the page. "Most extraordinary, but frightfully thrilling. I wonder where he—" "Here's some more," I cried. "Some more English. The big tank needs cleaning." That's all. Now he's talking fish talk again. "The big tank," the doctor murmured, frowning in a puzzled kind of way. "I wonder where on earth he learned—" Then he bounded up out of his chair. "I have it!" he yelled. "This fish has escaped from an aquarium. Why, of course. Look at the kinds of things he has learned. Picture postcards. They always sell them in aquariums. Don't spit. No smoking. This way out. The things the attendants say. And then, my, here's a queer one. That's the kind of thing that people exclaim when they look into tanks. It all fits. There's no doubt about it, Stubbins. We have a fish here who has escaped from captivity, and it's quite possible, not certain by any means, but quite possible, that I may now, through him, be able to establish communication with the shellfish. This is a great piece of luck." The second chapter, The Fidgit's Story. Well, now that he was started once more upon his old hobby of the shellfish languages, there was no stopping the doctor. He worked right through the night. A little after midnight, I fell asleep in a chair. About 2 in the morning, Bumpo fell asleep at the wheel, and for 5 hours the Curlew was allowed to drift where she liked. But still, John Dolittle worked on, trying his hardest to understand the Fidgit's language, struggling to make the Fidgit understand him. When I woke up, it was broad daylight again. The doctor was still standing at the listening tank, looking as tired as an owl and dreadfully wet, but on his face there was a proud and a happy smile. "Stubbins," he said as soon as he saw me stir, "I've done it. I've got the key to the Fidgit's language. It's a frightfully difficult language, quite different from anything I've ever heard. The only thing it reminds me of, slightly, is ancient Hebrew. It isn't shellfish, but it's a big step towards it. Now, the next thing, I want you to take a pencil and a fresh notebook and write down everything I say. The Fidgit has promised me to tell me the story of his life. I will translate it into English, and you put it down in the book. Are you ready?" Once more the doctor lowered his ear beneath the level of the water, and as he began to speak, I started to write. And this is the story the Fidgit told us. 13 months in an aquarium. I was born in the Pacific Ocean, close to the coast of Chile. I was one of a family of 2,510. Soon after our mother and father left us, we youngsters got scattered. The family was broken up by a herd of whales who chased us. I and my sister, Clippa, she was my favorite sister, had a very narrow escape for our lives. As a rule, whales are not very hard to get away from if you are good at dodging, if you've only got a quick swerve. But this one that came after Clippa and myself was a very mean whale. Every time he lost us under a stone or something, he'd come back and hunt until he routed us out into the open again. I never saw such a nasty, persevering brute. Well, we shook him at last, though not before he had worried us for hundreds of miles northward, up the west coast of South America. But luck was against us that day. While we were resting and trying to get our breath, another family of fidgets came rushing by, shouting, "Come on, swim for your lives! The dogfish are coming!" Now, dogfish are particularly fond of fidgets. We are, you might say, their favorite food, and for that reason we are always to keep away from the deep, muddy waters. What's more, dogfish are not as easy to escape from. They are terribly fast and clever hunters. So up we had to jump and on again. After we had gone a few more 100 miles, we looked back and saw that the dogfish were gaining on us. So we turned into a harbor. It happened to be the one on the west coast of the United States. Here we guessed and hoped the dogfish would not be likely to follow us. As it happened, they didn't even see us turn in, but dashed on northward, and we never saw them again. I hope they froze to death in the Arctic seas. But, as I said, luck was against us that day. While I and my sister were cruising gently around the ships anchored in the harbor looking for orange peels, a great delicacy with us, swoop, bang, we were caught in a net. We struggled for all we were worth, but it was no use. The net was small-meshed and strongly made. Kicking and flipping, we were hauled up to the side of the ship and dumped down on the dock, high and dry in a blazing noonday sun. Here a couple of old men in whiskers and spectacles leant over us, making strange sounds. Some codling and got caught in the net at the same time as we were. These the old men threw back into the sea, but us they seemed to think very precious. They put us carefully into a large jar, and after they had taken us on shore, they went into a big house and changed us from the jar into glass boxes full of water. The house was on the edge of the harbor, and a small stream of seawater was made to flow through the glass tanks so we could breathe properly. Of course, we had never lived inside glass walls before, and at first we kept on trying to swim through them and got our noses awfully sore bumping the glass at full speed. Then followed weeks and weeks of weary idleness. They treated us well so far as they knew how. The old fellows in spectacles came and looked at us proudly twice a day and saw that we had proper food to eat, the right amount of light, and that the water was not too hot or too cold. But oh, the dullness of that life. It seemed we were a kind of show. At a certain hour every morning the big doors to the house were thrown open, and everybody in the city who had nothing special to do came in and looked at us. There were other tanks filled with different kinds of fishes all around the walls of the big room, and the crowds would go from tank to tank, looking in at us through the glass, with their mouths open like half-witted flounders. We got so sick of it that we used to open our mouths back at them, and this they seemed to think is highly comical. One day my sister said to me, "Think you, brother, that these strange creatures who had captured us can talk?" "Surely," said I. "Have you not noticed that some talk with the lips only, some with the whole face, and yet others discourse with their hands? When they come quite close to the glass, you can hear them. Listen." At that moment, a female, larger than the rest, pressed her nose up against the glass, pointed at me, and said to her young behind her, "Oh, look, here's a queer one." And then we noticed that they nearly always said this when they looked in, and for a long time we thought that such was the whole extent of the language, this being people of but few ideas. To help pass away the weary hours, we learnt it by heart. "Oh, look, here's a queer one." But we never got to know what it meant. Other phrases, however, we did get the meaning of, and we even learned to read a little in man talk. Many big signs were there, set up on the walls, and when we saw the keepers stop the people from spitting and smoking, pointed these signs angrily, and read them out loud, we knew then these writings signified, "No smoking," and "Don't spit." Then, in the evenings, after the crowd had gone, the same aged male with one leg of wood swept the peanut shells with a broom every night, and while he was doing so he always whistled the same tune to himself. This melody we rather liked, and we learned that too by heart, thinking it was part of the language. Thus a whole year went by in this dismal place. Some days new fishes were brought in into other tanks, and other days old fishes were taken out. At first we hoped we would only be kept here for a while, and that after we had been looked at sufficiently we would be returned to freedom and the sea. But as month after month went by, and we were left undisturbed, our hearts grew heavy within our prison walls of glass, and we spoke to one another less and less. One day, when the crowd was thickest in the big room, a woman with a red face fainted from the heat. I watched through the glass and saw that the rest of the people got highly excited, though to me it did not seem to be a matter of very great importance. They threw cold water on her and carried her out into the open air. This made me think mightily, and presently I had a great idea burst upon me. "Sister," I said, turning to poor Clippa, who was sulking at the bottom of our prison, trying to hide behind a stone from the stupid gaze of the children who thronged about our tank. "Supposing we pretended we were sick, do you think they would take us from this stuffy house?" "Brother," she said wearily, "that they might do, but most likely they would throw us on the rubbish heap, or we would die in the hot sun." "But," said I, "why should they go abroad seeking rubbish heap when the harbor is so close? While we were being brought here, I saw men throwing their rubbish into the water. If they could only throw us in there, we could quickly reach the sea." "The sea," murmured poor Clippa with a faraway look in her eyes. She had fine eyes, had my sister Clippa. "How like a dream it sounds, the sea. Oh, brother, will we ever swim in it again, think you? Every night as I lie awake on the floor of this evil-smelling dungeon, I hear its hearty voice ringing in my ears. How I have longed for it, just to feel it once again, the nice big wholesome homeliness of it all. To jump, just to jump from the crest of the Atlantic wave, laughing in the trade wind's spindrift, down to a blue-green swirling trough. To chase the shrimps on a summer evening when the sky is red and the lights all pink with the foam. To lie in the top in the doldrum's noonday calm and warm your tummy in the tropic sun. To wander hand in hand once more through the giant seaweed forests of the Indian Ocean, seeking delicious eggs of the pop-pop. To play hide and seek among the castles of the coral towns with their pearl and jasper windows spangling the floor of the Spanish Main. To picnic in the anemone meadows, dim blue and lilac gray, that lie in the lowlands beyond the South Sea Garden. To throw somersaults on the springy sponge beds in the Mexican Gulf. To poke about the dead ships and see what wonders and adventures lie inside. And then, on winter nights when the nor'easter whips water into froth, to swoop down and down to get away from the cold, down to where the water's warm and dark, down and still down, till we spy the twinkle of the fire eels far below where our friends and cousins sit chatting around the council grotto. Chatting, brother, over the news and gossip of the sea. Oh. And then she broke down completely, sniffling. "Stop it," I said. "You make me homesick. Look here, let's pretend we're sick, or better still, let's pretend we're dead, and see what happens. If they throw us on a rubbish heap, we'll fry in the sun. We'll not be much worse off than we are in this smelly prison. What do you say? Will you risk it?" "I will," she said, "and gladly." So next morning, 2 Fidgits were found by the keeper floating on top of the water in the tank, stiff and dead. We gave a mighty good imitation of dead fish, although I say it myself. The keeper ran and got the old gentleman with spectacles and whiskers. They threw up their hands in horror when they saw us. Lifting us carefully out of the water, they laid us on wet cloths. That was the hardest part of all. If you're a fish and get taken out of the water, you have to keep opening and shutting your mouth to breathe at all, and even that you can't keep up for long. And all this time we had to stay stiff as sticks and breathe silently through half-closed lips. Well, the old fellows poked us and felt us and pinched us until I thought they'd never be done. Then, when their backs were turned a moment, a wretched cat got up on the table and nearly ate us. Luckily, the old men turned round in time and shooed her away. You may be sure that we took a couple of good gulps of air while they weren't looking, and that was the only thing that had saved us from choking. I wanted to whisper to Clippa to be brave and stick it out, but I couldn't even do that, because, as you know, most kinds of fish talk cannot be heard, not even a shout, unless you're underwater. Then, just as we were about to give it up and let on that we were still alive, one of the old men shook his head sadly, lifted us up, and carried us out of the building. Now for it, I thought for myself. We'll soon know our fate, liberty or the garbage can. Outside, to our unspeakable horror, he made straight for a large ash barrel which stood against the wall on the other side of the yard. Most happily for us, however, while he was crossing the yard, a very dirty man with a wagon and horses drove up and took the ash barrel away. I suppose it was his property. Then the old man looked around for some other place to throw us. He seemed about to cast us on the ground. He evidently thought that this would make the yard untidy, and he desisted. The suspense was terrible. He moved outside the yard gate, and my heart sank once more as I saw that he now intended to throw us in the gutter of the roadway. But fortune was indeed with us that day. A large man in blue clothes and silver buttons stopped him in a nick of time. Evidently, from the way the large man lectured and waved his short, thick stick, it was against the rules of the town to throw dead fish in the streets. At last, to our unutterable joy, the old man turned and moved off with us towards the harbor. He walked so slowly, muttering to himself all the way and watching the man in a blue coat out of the corner of his eye, that I wanted to bite his finger and make him hurry up. Both Klippa and I were actually at our last gasp. Finally, he reached the seawall, and giving us one last sad look, he dropped us in the waters of the harbor. Never had we realized anything like the thrill of that moment, as we felt the salt wetness close over our heads. With one flick of our tails, we came to life again. The old man was so surprised that he fell right into the water, almost on top of us. From this, he was rescued by a sailor with a boat hook, and the last we saw of him, the man in blue was dragging him away by the coat collar, lecturing him again. Apparently, it was also against the rules of the town to throw dead fish into the harbor. But we? What time or thought had we for his troubles? We were free. In lightning leaps and curving spurts and crazy zigzags, whooping, shrieking with delight, we sped for home in the open sea. And that is all of my story, and I will now, as promised last night, try to answer any questions you may have about the sea, on condition that I am set at liberty as soon as you have done. The Doctor. Is there any part of the sea deeper than that known as the Nero Deep? I mean the one near the island of Guam. The Fidgit. Why, certainly. There's one much deeper than that near the mouth of the Amazon River, but it's small and hard to find. We call it the Deep Hole, and there's another in the Antarctic Sea. The Doctor. Can you talk any shellfish language yourself? The Fidgit. No, not a word. We regular fishes don't have anything to do with the shellfish. We consider them a low class. The Doctor. But when you're near them, can you hear the sound they make talking? I mean, without necessarily understanding what they say? The Fidgit. Only with the very largest ones. Shellfish have such weak, small voices it is almost impossible for any but their own kind to hear them. With the bigger ones it is different. They make a sad, booming noise, rather like an iron pipe being knocked with a stone, only not nearly so loud, of course. The Doctor. I am most anxious to get down to the bottom of the sea, to study many things, but we land animals, as you no doubt know, are unable to breathe underwater. Have you any ideas that might help me? The Fidgit. I think that for both your difficulty, the best thing for you to do would be trying to get a hold of the great glass sea snail. Doctor. Who or what is the great glass sea snail? The Fidgit. He is an enormous saltwater snail, one of the winkle family, but as large as a big house. He talks quite loudly when he speaks, but this is not often. He can go to any part of the ocean, at all depths, because he doesn't have to be afraid of any creature in the sea. His shell is made of transparent mother of pearl, so that you can see right through it, but it's thick and strong. When he's out of his shell, he carries it on empty on his back. There is room in it for a wagon and a pair of horses. He's been seen carrying his food in it when traveling. The Doctor. I feel that is just the creature I've been looking for. He could take me and my assistant inside his shell, and we could explore the deepest depths in safety. Do you think you could get him for me? The Fidgit. Alas, no. I would willingly if I could, but he is hardly ever seen by ordinary fish. He lives at the bottom of the deep hole and seldom comes out. And into the deep hole, the lower waters, which are muddy, fishes such as we are afraid to go. The Doctor. Dear me, that's a terrible disappointment. Are there many of this kind of snail in the sea? The Fidgit. Oh no, he's the only one in existence since his second wife died long, long ago. He's the last of the giant shellfish. He belongs to past ages when the whales were land animals and all that. They say he is over 70,000 years old. The doctor. Good gracious, what wonderful things he could tell me. I do wish I could meet him. The Fidgit. Were there any more questions you wish to ask me? This water in your tank is getting quite warm and sickly. I'd like to be put back into the sea as soon as you can spare me. The doctor. Just one more thing. When Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic in 1492, he threw overboard 2 copies of his diary sealed up in barrels. One of them was never found. It must have sunk. I would like to get it from my library. Do you happen to know where it is? The Fidgit. Yes, I do. That too is in the deep hole. When the barrel sank, the currents drifted it northwards down what we call the Orinoco Slope, till it finally disappeared into the deep hole. If it was any other part of the sea, I'd try and get it for you, but not there. The doctor. Well, that is all, I think. I hate to put you back into the sea because I know as soon as I do, I'll think of 100 other questions I wanted to ask you. But I must keep my promise. Would you care for anything before you go? It seems a cold day. Some cracker crumbs or something? The Fidgit. No, I won't stop. All I want at present is fresh seawater. The doctor. I cannot thank you enough for all the information you have given me. You've been very helpful and patient. The Fidgit. Pray do not mention it. It has been a real pleasure to be of assistance to the great John Dolittle. You are, of course, as you know, already quite famous among the better class of fishes. Goodbye, and good luck to you and your ship and all your plans. The doctor carried the listening tank to a porthole, opened it, and emptied the tank into the sea. Goodbye, he murmured as a faint splash reached us from without. I dropped my pencil on the table and leaned back with a sigh. My fingers were so stiff with writer's cramp that I felt as though I should never be able to open my hand again. But I, at least, had a night's sleep. As for the poor doctor, he was so weary that he had hardly put the tank back upon the table and dropped into a chair when his eyes closed and he began to snore. In the passage outside, Polynesia scratched angrily at the door. I rose and let her in. A nice state of affairs, she stormed. What sort of ship is this? There's that man upstairs asleep at the wheel, and the doctor asleep down here, and you making pothooks in a copybook with a pencil. Expect the ship to steer herself to Brazil? We're just drifting around the sea like an empty bottle, and a week behind time as it is. What's happened to you all? She was so angry that her voice rose to a scream, but it would have taken more than that to wake the doctor. I put the notebook carefully in a drawer and went on deck to take the wheel. The 3rd chapter. Bad Weather. As soon as I had the Curlew swung around upon her course again, I noticed something peculiar. We were not going as fast as we had been. Our favorable wind had almost entirely disappeared. This, at first, we did not worry about, thinking that at any moment it might spring up again. But the whole day went by. Then 2 days. Then a week. 10 days. And the wind grew no stronger. The Curlew just dawdled along at the speed of a toddling babe. I now saw that the doctor was becoming uneasy. He kept getting out his sextant, an instrument which tells you what part of the ocean you are in, and making calculations. He was forever looking at his maps and measuring distances on them. The far edge of the sea, all around us, he examined with his telescope 100 times a day. But doctor, I said when I found him one afternoon mumbling to himself about the misty appearance of the sky, it wouldn't matter so much, would it, if we did take a little longer over the trip? We've got plenty to eat on board now, and the purple bird of paradise will know that we've been delayed by something that we couldn't help. Yes, I suppose so, he said thoughtfully, but I hate to keep her waiting. At this season of the year, she generally goes to the Peruvian mountains for her health. And besides, the good weather she prophesied is likely to end any day now and delay us still further. If we could only keep moving at even a fair speed, I wouldn't mind. It's this hanging around, almost dead still, that gets me restless. Here comes the wind. Not very strong, but maybe it'll grow. A gentle breeze from the northeast came singing through the ropes, and we smiled up hopefully at the curlew's leaning masts. "We've only got another 150 miles to make to sight the coast of Brazil," said the doctor. "If that wind would just stay with us, steady, for a full day, we'd see land." But suddenly the wind changed, swung to the east, then back to the northeast, then to the north. It came in fitful gusts, as though it hadn't made up its mind which way to blow, and I was kept busy at the wheel, swinging the curlew this way and that to keep the right side of it. Presently we heard Polynesia, who was in the rigging keeping lookout for land or passing ships, screech down to us, "Bad weather coming. That jumpy wind is an ugly sign. And look, over there in the east, see that black line down low? If that isn't a storm, I'm a landlubber. The gales round here are fierce when they do blow. Tear your canvas out like paper. You take the wheel, Doctor. It'll need a strong arm if it's a real storm. I'll go wake Bumpo and Chi-Chi. This looks bad to me. We'd best get all the sails down right away, till we see how strong she's going to blow." Indeed, the whole sky was now beginning to take on a very threatening look. The black line to the eastward grew blacker as it came nearer and nearer. A low, rumbly, whispering noise went moaning over the sea. The water, which had been so blue and smiling, turned to a ruffled, ugly gray. And across the darkening sky, shreds of clouds swept like tattered witches flying from storm. I must confess I was frightened. You see, I had only so far seen the sea in friendly moods, sometimes quiet and lazy, sometimes laughing, venturesome and reckless, sometimes brooding and poetic, when the moonbeams turned her ripples into silver threads and dreaming snowy night clouds piled up fairy castles in the sky. But as yet I had not known, or even guessed at, the terrible strength of the sea's wild anger. When the storm finally struck us, we leaned right over flatly on our side, as though some invisible giant had slapped the poor curlew in the cheek. After that, things happened so thick and so fast that what with the wind that stopped your breath, the driving and blinding water, the deafening noise, and the rest, I haven't a very clear idea of how our shipwreck came about. I remember seeing the sails, which we were now trying to roll up upon the deck, torn out of our hands by the wind and go overboard like a penny balloon, very nearly carrying Chi-Chi with them. And I have a dim recollection of Polynesia screeching somewhere for one of us to go downstairs and close the portholes. In spite of our masts being bare of sail, we were now scudding along to the southward at a great pace. But every once in a while, huge gray-black waves would arise from under the ship's side like nightmare monsters, swell and climb, and then crash down upon us, pressing us into the sea. And the poor curlew would come to a standstill, half underwater, like a gasping, drowning pig. While I was clambering along towards the wheel to see the doctor, clinging like a leech with my hands and legs to the rails lest I be blown overboard, one of these tremendous seas tore loose my hold, filled my throat with water, and swept me like a cork the full length of the deck. My head struck a door with an awful bang, and then I fainted. And that is the end of the chapter and the end of the episode. Thank you for joining me.